Alright, in front of me is the Mavic 3, and behind the Mavic 3 is a bunch of cardboard taped to look like a man. And we're gonna do an active track where I walk forwards and we'll see if the drone hits the cardboard. Hello internet! Hi, my name is Jeremy, and in this video we are testing the ActiveTrack 5.0, and we'll be finding out how good is the Mavic 3 in tracking and keeping a subject in frame. How good is it in tracking a subject through an obstacle? And ultimately, what I really want to know is, can the Mavic 3 autopilot like a Tesla? And by that I mean, can it perform active track and still fly itself autonomously without knocking into things? Tree is coming up, the tree is coming up. Are you gonna see the trees? It saw the tree. So, let's find out.
Scanning. Target acquired.
Now all these were shot using ActiveTrack 5.0 at 4K at 60 frames. And as you can see, the Mavic 3 does an excellent job in keeping the subject in frame. And you can choose to track the subject from multiple angles, and if you decide to change it later, you can do so even while tracking. And the results are just simply amazing. It's as if we were shooting an expensive car commercial, and we did it all without even touching the control sticks.
Hey, look, Ma, no hands.
However, there are some limitations. For example, you won't be allowed to track anything that isn't a car, a boat, or a person. Believe me, we've tried. And when tracking sideways and forward, the tracking isn't that reliable. And I think this is probably because the software loves to frame for beautiful cinematic shots, which is great, but those kind of tight shots don't always leave enough room for the AI to notice when you are changing directions. So sometimes when the Mavic 3 has fallen behind, you may find it zooming over your head just to catch up with you to keep you in frame, or sometimes it may just lose you entirely.
Tracking subject lost.
We found for the best tracking performance, track from behind, and then it becomes like a heat-seeking missile that's incredibly hard to shake off. That is, unless if you can go faster than 43 kilometers per hour, or when there is a software glitch. We'll talk more about that later in this video. Now, one way to shake off the first few versions of ActiveTrack was to simply go behind an obstacle, and then ActiveTrack would just give up.
Tracking subject lost.
With the new ActiveTrack 5.0, this has improved a lot, because when an obstacle comes between the subject and the Mavic 3, the ActiveTrack 5.0 will cleverly predict the path of the subject and then keep the camera trained onto it. And when it doesn't find the subject on its predicted path, it will even start to hunt for it. And this can be a bit scary if the obstacle avoidance doesn't see what's in front of it. And this is what happened to my Mavic 3. ActiveTrack 5.0. And while it didn't crash, one of the propellers did suffer from doing a bit of pruning. So why is this happening? Doesn't the Mavic 3 have obstacle avoidance? Well, this is because the Mavic 3 uses stereoscopic vision for obstacle avoidance, which is the same as how we use our eyes to judge distance and to register 3D shapes and objects in our world, which is a kind way of saying stereoscopic vision isn't very good at judging distance. A radar or LiDAR would have been more accurate for judging distance, and my propellers wouldn't have done any pruning, but it would have made the Mavic 3 terribly less compact to carry around. The Mavic 3 uses 8 mini fisheye cameras as sensors, and they come in pairs. The way stereoscopic vision works is by comparing two flat images captured from two cameras placed in an offset distance from each other. And the difference between those flat images is what the Mavic 3 perceives as depth. Stereoscopic vision is also what Tesla use in their cars. However, in order for stereoscopic vision to work properly, the Mavic 3 still needs to know if what's in front of it is an object or an empty space that it can fly through. And this is where AI and machine learning comes in. And if you've ever wondered why those little CAPTCHA tests always gets you to identify street signs and vehicles, well, That's because you're helping train these AI systems to make them smarter. Look, hopefully the AI on the Mavic 3 is just smart enough to avoid knocking into things and then dumb enough to not want to kill all of humanity. And at this moment, I would say humanity is still in safe hands, because according to DJI, obstacle avoidance still can't see fine objects like branches and power lines, and they can only operate safely up to speeds of 43 kilometers per hour, which I assume is probably the fastest the CPU on the Mavic 3 can go when processing 8 streams of videos to find out if there is an obstacle in its flight path. And remember, the CPU is doing all this while flying the drone, predicting the trajectory of the subject, and controlling the camera at the same time. So unless this $22,000 drone has got like an Apple M1 Max chip or a Super Intel chip with tons of memory, I think the CPU will suffer from a bit of bottleneck from time to time, just simply due to the sheer amount of information that it has to process. And here's an example of it failing. While performing an ActiveTrack in a wide open field, tracking from behind, you will notice that the Mavic 3 suddenly decides to hang a bit further back, and then it narrowly misses a post, and then it proceeded to fly in a circle like it's lost or something. And then again, narrowly missing the same post before reacquiring me. That would have been a nasty crash, and I can only assume that there was either a CPU overload or a buggy software while performing that track. Now, despite all that, obstacle avoidance have saved my Mavic 3 a couple of times. Exhibit 1. While doing an ActiveTrack tracking from the side, the Mavic 3 did an evasive maneuver to avoid hitting some branches. Exhibit 2. The same situation, but this time I got to witness how the Mavic 3 took evasive action. The Mavic 3 just dove automatically while flying sideways, narrowly avoiding some branches, and it did that while still accurately tracking my movements. You should have seen my face when I thought it was about to crash. But luckily, it didn't. Look, I think ActiveTrack is a great tool for any filmmaker or anyone that loves to create cinematic tracking shots. It's just so easy and effortless because you don't need to learn the complicated movements of flying a drone.
Hey, look, Ma, no hands.
And having that automation frees you up to worry about other things like making sure that you have the correct camera exposure, ISO settings, and shutter speed. And if you're a one-man film crew, then the ActiveTrack 5.0 will become very useful to you. Now, as for obstacle avoidance, to fully rely on it
is a fool's errand.
And that's because if Mr. Elon Musk still hasn't built a car that can fully drive itself, then we probably shouldn't expect the Mavic 3 to perform miracles. But I will say that the obstacle avoidance will save you from a nasty crash 80% of the time, and for that 20%, when it goes a bit cuckoo, you should still keep an eye on the drone and your thumbs hovering over the controller. Thank you for making it till the end, and if you have enjoyed this video, please do give us a thumbs up, and if not, the other button works just as well. And do consider subscribing, as it will let us know to make more videos like these. Thank you for watching, we'll see you in the next one. Bye!
Hasta la vista, baby.